because we want to get dessert in the oven so that we'll be able to eat it before you leave today. And I'll tell you a little bit about everything we're making, but the very first thing we're going to make that we're going to get in the oven very quickly is a grain-free, dairy-free, gluten-free, vegan pumpkin pie.
Wow.
Because it's
Yum.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So first things first, we've got a super easy recipe. Got food processor, I've got some chopped dates. I chopped them up a little bit first because dates will just whirl and they won't break down if you don't give them a little chop first. You can also buy them pre-chopped. Just, you want to make sure with actually all the ingredients, make sure there's nothing else on the package in the ingredients list other than just the ingredient themselves. You don't want additives, you don't want sugar, you don't want salt, etc. Try to get the purest ingredients, whole ingredients that you can. So we've got dates, we've got some almond flour, which is going to just be a binder for this crust. We've got pecans, we've got walnuts, and we've got a little bit of sea salt that I'm going to add in right now. And just move this out of the way here for a second. Okay. We've got our lid for our processor. One thing I wanted to mention about the pecans in particular was they are really good for keeping your skin tone and keeping your skin young looking. So pecans are amazing for your complexion, so good to know. I'm just going to pulse this, it's going to make some noise, so bear with me. And we want to get it pretty finely ground because we're going to be pushing this into the pie plate. And there you go. So if you go long enough, it starts to get kind of a moist quality to it. And what you're going to see is, you're going to see that the dates are going to seal it shut. But you want it to kind of be able to stick together. So we're going to go a tiny bit longer. Just so that it's gummy and sticky. Let's see how that goes. And if it's still too dry, which actually it's pretty good, but what we can do is we can add in either a tiny bit of water or a tiny bit of coconut fat, coconut oil, just to get it to hold together a little bit better. But I think we're actually pretty good. So you can see, so I've got this texture that's just holding together, right? And what you can do actually is you can use this not just for pie crust. You could make like energy balls.
Oh,
yeah.
Thinking,
So just make little balls, dip them in like dark chocolate. Oh my god. Or because you want. So I think that's good. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna dump this into the pie plate. Super simple. And you see I've got my finger in there to hold the blade. Just a little cook's trick. We're gonna make the pie filling, and we're gonna use the same bowl, so I'm just gonna kind of scrape it out a little bit. I'm not so worried about getting a little bit of this in the pie filling because we're going to be blending the filling as well, so it's going to get really smooth. And Sandy, I will have you just kind of smooth this out, and then what we're going to do actually is, yes, you can wash your hands. Oops. You're going to smooth it out and push it up the sides, and you can even use the spatula to do it. While Sandy's working, and there's paper towel behind you, just hanging on the wall. While Sandy's working on that, we're going to do the pie filling, which is equally easy. We've got pure organic pumpkin. And you don't want the pumpkin pie filling, you just want the one that's just plain old pumpkin. And pumpkin is a fabulous ingredient. It's actually very low on the glycemic index, even though it's a squash. It's got a lot of fiber in it, so that's going to slow down your digestion, which is super critical to actually everything you eat. Slow digestion, honestly, is probably number one. Yeah, so so you're going to you can kind of go around. I would maybe go around the side and do the sides first. And then you can take your hand and flatten down the bottom. So don't be shy. Just get it all in there. So pumpkin, also full of a antioxidant called carotenoids, which some of you have heard of. It's the orange, compound that's in carrots.
I'm sorry, this is coconut milk?
Pumpkin, yes.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
tell you in a second.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Carotenoids, which are really good for your eyes. This is actually 100% made by me, plain almond milk, which you're going to learn about as well. And I'm going to be demonstrating how to make almond milk in a minute.
Yeah.
So 100% almond milk. You can use any kind of non-dairy milk that you want. You could use coconut milk if you wanted to, but we're just using almond milk.
Yeah.
Maple syrup, of course, being Canadian. but you do get maple syrup in the US, I've noticed, which is amazing. And so maple syrup is a pure unrefined sugar. So by definition, it's going to be much better for you than, say, a white sugar, which has had all of the goodness taken out of it and stripped out of it, and you're just left with a very high glycemic sweetener that doesn't do anybody any good, causes blood glucose spikes, which are very unhealthy, and also can interfere with that precious sleep that we were talking about earlier. So we want the least refined ingredients that we can, including when it comes to adding sweetness to your dish. Got a little bit of vanilla, just happen to have this tiny little bottle, which I figured was the perfect amount, so we're going to use that up. And we've got a little bit of arrowroot powder, which is a starch, and it's very similar to cornstarch or tapioca, but it's unrefined as well. And unlike cornstarch, we don't have to worry about it being a GMO or a crop that's been sort of monopolized by big companies, so we don't want to worry about that. We've got pie spice, a little bit of salt, because salt adds flavor to everything, and I'm using just pure sea salt, and just some raw oats, whole grain oats. If you have a gluten, everything today is gluten-free, but if you have a gluten allergy, like a celiac, not just an intolerance, but an actual allergy, be sure that your oats say gluten-free, because even though oats are inherently gluten-free, sometimes they're processed in plants where gluten is processed, so it can cause a problem that way. So again, we're just going to blend this. Sandy, that looks absolutely amazing.
Good job.
Nice job. So we're just going to blend this until it's super, super smooth. And what I like to do is just make sure around the very edge we don't get a thick kind of corner. Only because we're going to be baking it and eating it kind of quickly today, so I don't want it to be too soft anywhere. But that's perfect. So we want this silky smooth. I'm just going to scrape it down one time to be sure. And the oats act as kind of a thickener and a binder for the filling. Oops. There we go.
What other fillings we could use instead of pumpkin?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Butternut squash or sweet potato. And they all kind of have similar nutrition benefits in terms of the carotenoids and the vitamins and the antioxidants. And they're all low glycemic.
But even something sweet. You
Fiber.
could use like an applesauce kind of, or no?
I mean, you could use some applesauce, but that's not going to, it doesn't have any starch. So they're both complex carbohydrates, but this has some starch, which is going to help thicken like a pudding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think that's good. It's getting, I don't know why, it's like it's staying a tiny bit, the oats aren't completely dissolving here, but we should be good. Let me give it one more whirl. I get it pretty smooth. Oh, I think I know why. When I did this previously, I used my Vitamix, which is we're going to be using for the almond milk. So the Vitamix is like makes everything, you know, completely pulverized.
Yeah.
This will be perfectly fine. I don't mind a tiny bit of texture in it actually. So now we're just going to pour the filling into the crust. Super, super simple. And there we go. And so you guys are going to be more hands-on with some of the recipes, but I just figured I would demonstrate this at the start. I'm also going to be demonstrating a smoothie that you guys are going to get to try, and like I said, the almond milk, and then everything else is going to be a little more hands-on. None of the recipes we're doing today are terribly complex because it's more about learning. I want to be able to have time to fill you in about the nutrients that you're eating and why they're beneficial. So there we go. This pie is it's not a terribly deep pumpkin pie. You could use, if you want it deeper, it would take a little longer to bake. So that was one of my concerns today. So I wanted to use a sort of wider pan to make sure that it would bake in time. But also, yeah, it would just take longer to bake if you were doing it deeper at home. So just be cognizant of that. If you do it at home and it seems deeper, just watch the time to make sure that it's deeper. So this is pretty much it. We're just going to put it in, and we're going to set the timer for 40 minutes. One thing to know is that since we've got those dates and the nuts, which have a tendency to burn easily, as soon as we start to smell this baby, we want to have a look and check it to make sure that it's not burning. And if the crust, because the crust was a little higher than the filling, if the crust is starting to get real dark, we can just throw some foil around the edge and then let it finish baking that way. So that's
It's in the middle rack, down?
Yeah, so it is in I put it one rack lower than middle because I
Okay.
know with the sweetness involved, I didn't want it to be too close to the top, so I didn't want it to burn.
Okay.
So one rack lower than the middle. I also have done this as a tart, so if you could make it quite shallow in a tart pan, it will bake even a lot quicker, obviously, if you do it that way. So you can do it any way you like, just the deeper it is, the longer it's going to take to bake. And you just want it to, you'll see it'll start to look almost a little bit cracked in the middle when it's done, almost like a cheesecake.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't really jiggle when you kind of do that. Then you'll know it's ready. So we'll have a look at it in a few, in a little bit when it dings, and it will let us know when it's ready. And so that is our pie.